Hello. In this video, we'll be looking at Qt style sheets. So Qt style sheets are a way to take the widgets and customize them to change their look on the screen in pretty minute detail. So you can change anything from the background color to the rounding of the borders. So there are a lot of things you can change with style sheets that will be very helpful in making an application look good and sort of customizing it to how you want it to look. Okay, so we're here in the virtual machine, in the CrossControl virtual machine, and I have already opened up Qt Creator, so we actually have the application that we created in the first video, going over creating a new widgets application. So style sheets are specific to Qt widgets, so if you're using QML, then style sheets will not help you out, and unless you're curious about it, you don't need to continue with this video. Okay, so we're gonna come into our UI here, application UI, and here again we just have a very basic application, which is what we start with when we create a new project from a template. Okay, so we're gonna add in a few things, and I actually like to sort of do a test or scenario from one of the getting started guides. I believe in the Link software suite there's a getting started guide and working with the user interface, and in that it goes over some examples and things, and this is one of the examples I give in that guide. The guide's a bit outdated, but it's still useful for some things. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take I'm gonna grab a horizontal slider from the input widgets section. We're just gonna set that up here, and next we're going to grab a let's see, digital Of course I can't find what I want when. Okay, so we're gonna grab a label for one, an LCD number, and the horizontal slider. We'll sort of align them. So what our goal is gonna be is I want this to all match up. So we're gonna make it look like one real widget that is just all together. So right now, obviously, it doesn't look very good, the three of them, and they don't look like they belong together at all. So we're gonna change that a bit. So what I want this to do is we're gonna first take the text label, double click on it, and we can edit the text inside of it. So I just want to make this %. You could also come down here and edit the text here if you want, and you can say, the % or whatever. But in this case, we're just going to say %. And what I want this to be is as we drag this slider, I want this value to increase and kind of show the value of the slider. And in this case, it's going to be from 0 to 100%. And so this is going to represent 0 to 100 as we drag this slider. So next, let's click on our digital number here, and if we look on the right side, we have our properties list. So the properties of an object sort of are a hierarchy. So here we have our object, QObject, and QWidget. So the QWidget is like the highest level class that we have. And then the next one is this QFrame class, and then QLCD number finally. So there's different properties that we can set for each one. You know, your height, width, X, Y is going to be for every widget. You know, every widget is going to have these properties. You know, every QFrame has these properties, and then finally we get down to the LCD number specifically. All right, so in here, the first thing we're going to do is this digit count. Right now it's set to 5, which means it can show up to 5 digits in this box. But we only want to show between 1 and 100. So we want to show at max 3 digits. So we're going to change that to 3. And you'll see immediately our 0 gets bigger and looks better. We could change things like, you know, the mode, so decimal, hexadecimal, binary, or octagonal. Don't really know that one. You know, our segment style, filled versus flat, versus outline. So we'll just keep it at filled. The int value, the value that we're initially doing. So we're not going to mess with any of that for now. Okay, so the first thing we'll notice here is that this percent is, unlike these widgets here that are filled with a background, we have no background in this. It's transparent. So let's first look at the background here, and let's right click, and this is going to be our first foray into style sheets. So we're going to click style sheets. And right now it's taking the background of the style sheet. I guess this is, let's do it this way first, and then I'll show you where it's getting that currently. So this is our style sheet, and we have nothing in it. So let's go ahead and look at what we can do. So if we want to use a gradient color, we can do some of that, and there's these drop down arrows. So here we can say, what do we actually want to affect with this gradient? So we can affect our border, you know, just the top border, just the right, just the bottom, the grid line color, selection color. If we just select color, this will select the text color. So in this case, let's take a look at our background color. And here it gives us several sort of pre-made gradients. I've added a few of my own, so I think this is actually one that I've added, so you guys, unless you've added some of your own, won't have it. But you can select, if you do want to add some of your own, you can select new, you know, and select the actual color that you want in different sections. So if I select this one, I can, you know, select 2 red colors, and the middle section, you know, a little less red, for instance. So anyway, I can, you know, you can make different colors however you want. And for instance, I like using RGB values. So yeah, you can mess around with this, mess around with how the gradients actually are formed, the different stops within your gradient. You can add new stops. So I would recommend, you know, gradients are, I would say, outside the scope of this training. So if you don't know about how to make gradients and add stops and that sort of thing, I would recommend you look that up. Down here is, you know, we can make it more or less transparent. So we can do a lot by adding and creating our own gradients here. So you can actually do a lot there, but in this case, I'm going to use one I've already created here. We're going to do that and just select there, and you can see it adds to our style sheet automatically. So if I hit apply, the background here is changed. So, okay, that's good. I like it. A note about style sheets in general. So style sheets in Qt work, or the closest language to them is CSS. So CSS is a web styling language, and style sheets use CSS in Qt to style the widgets. So if you're familiar with CSS or know anything about CSS, it's very similar syntax. The syntax to actually change objects is very similar, if not the same. So if you are familiar with CSS or want to look up some basics of CSS, it is very similar and will carry over here. So as we're making these modifications, so we've changed the background color and it's done that for us. Here we can say, for instance, add color, just make it the color, which, as I said, will change the text color. So here, if add color just means it's going to be a flat color instead of a gradient. So here I can say, okay, I want my text to be black, and there we go. So the little digital icon turns black, and all right, so that looks good. So now let's say we want to do the same thing to this percent. So let's copy our style sheet for the digital number, and we're just gonna hit Control C to copy it, and come in here and say change style sheet, and then paste our style sheet from the other one and hit apply. And there we go. So our background now has changed. You see the percent markers turned black. Another thing that we might want to do with the percent, though, is you'll notice right now it's really small. So we want to say add font and maybe make it bigger. So let's make it 48 font. A little too big. Let's try 40. Still too big. How about 30? A little bit better. 25. Okay. That looks good. So we can actually also make this, right now it's left aligned. So if we come to the properties here, again, scroll down to the bottom, so we get the properties of the Q label, which we're using. And here we have our alignment, horizontal, and we can change it to align center. All right, so that looks okay. Let's come here and copy our background again. So our background color, and we're gonna make this background color the same. So now all three of our items are the same background color. All right, so getting better. They're looking a little bit more matched up. So if we were to now bring these together, you know, it doesn't look great still. Like you'll notice we have these roundings here, and this has a little line there. It still is looking weird, but a little bit better. Okay, so here's some other points. So as I said, we have this rounding here, and you may not notice it, but we don't have a border on this percent box. And we have a border on both of these. So that means that when you line these up, like this comes up higher because you're seeing a little bit of a border here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a border around this so it matches with these two. And then we're going to change it so these corners where they meet up will not be rounded. So let's first add a border to this one. So we're gonna go change style sheet again, come down here, and some of these, some of what I'll type, I happen to know, but I'll also point you to where you can learn some of these commands. So the first thing you can do is come to help here, and you'll notice we'll hit OK, and if we scroll down to the bottom, there's a list of style sheet properties, and you'll notice it gives you some different properties you can select. So In this case, what I'm going to do is border style. And there's different border styles that we can select. So the one that we are going to select in this case is it sort of gives you here the syntax to change a border style. But Qt has got very good documentation. So you can see online like style sheets. So I can just say Qt style sheets. And here we go. If we like look in here, it will give us like, let's see, I'm looking for a specific, here we go. So style sheet usage. So it gives us customizing foreground, background, dynamic properties, and then it gives us the style sheets for any specific widget over here that is in Qt. So if we wanted to look at the style sheets for customizing the Q progress bar, we could look here and it gives us some things like customizing the border, how the actual bar in the middle looks, you know, whether you have these segments or not. And it gives you a lot of different customization options. You can also look at Qt style sheets like border style, I believe, and probably something like that. And let's see, I don't know exactly which one we're looking for here, but yeah, you can find, you know, a lot of information online. Again, though, it's also based on CSS. So in this case, I'm going to not use this solid one, but I'm going to use a border style called outset. So we can come back to our edit text here, come back into our user interface, select change style sheet, and I'm going to type border style outset and end it with a semicolon, just like you can see has been added here to all of these. Just as a note, these tools up here give you the ability to like add colors and things like that, but there are some things like adding a border style that you're just gonna have to like look up or know, or yeah, pretty much just if you want to do something with a widget that you don't see immediately up here in like an easy addition, I would just recommend you look online and say Qt style sheets, adding a border, for instance. But in this case, I know, you know, I can say this border style outset and hit apply. And if you notice that it shrunk down, so what it's doing is actually adding a black border. We could, so we can see it better, either say border color white, and now you notice this turned white, so now we can sort of see the border a little bit better, and we can copy this. We could have also brought down this arrow, said add color, border color, and it would have done the same thing in the tool section. So let's add this to each one. Okay, so now we each have a border color. So now let's get to changing the border radius where they meet up. So in this case, let's change we want to change the top right and bottom right borders. So again, this is a bit of CSS that I happen to know, but we're going to say border top, can't type, right radius, and then we give it a value. So we say In this case, 0 points or not, we could say none, I believe, and it would get the same. But if we hit apply, you can notice now, it's hard to tell, but this is now a completely straight line, or a complete like right angle instead of any rounding. So we're just going to copy this and change it. So border top, or sorry, we're going to change this to border bottom right radius 0px. And there we go. So now we're at 2 right angles here. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy these two, because we want to do the same here and here. So in this case, we're gonna, since it's in the middle, we don't want any of the borders to be rounded. So we can say, in this case, we can do each one if we wanted to, or just say border radius 0px. So this will make it so there are no roundings anywhere. In the same way, we could say border radius like 20px, and it will really round it. You know, so you can control, if you just say border radius, you can control all of it at once, but you can also, as in this case, control any specific corner. So we're going to keep it at 0 though. All right, and in this case, we want the left top and left bottom. So we're going to paste those two from our other one, but instead of saying right, we're going to change this to left. And okay, so now we could align all of these, and that looks much better. That looks actually like one widget, except for me, I don't really like the line here. So let's get rid of the border completely on the right of this and the left of this one. So we're going to come back in here and just say border right none, and hit apply, and you'll see now that's disappeared. So we can't even see this one because it's actually on the bottom. So if I actually were to right click and say bring to front, you know, now we could see it, and we could again change it and say border left none, and hit apply. And yeah, so now we have no border, and it looks like one continuous widget, which is what we wanted, and we achieve that with style sheets. So we can, you know, select each one and move it. Unfortunately, I don't know of a way to necessarily group them together. There may be a way, and if someone knows it, you know, please leave it in the comment section on YouTube. It'd be nice to know, but I don't know of a way to do that. I think you can group them, for instance, in another container. Like if I brought in a widget container, whoops. I think I could add all three of these to that and then drag this up. You know, I don't know. It gets a little, I don't know that I necessarily like that option to do. So I keep them separate, but yeah, so that's the idea behind style sheets. So we can do that to really any widget that is part of Qt. So a couple notes here. You'll notice these widgets, when you get down here, say links. So these are custom widgets that we've added in to Qt. And for instance, like our round gauge here. These work slightly different. They actually pull from pictures that we've included in the virtual machine. So style sheets don't work like they would on other Qt-based widgets, which are everything but these links ones. So we'll go over how to change the look of the links-based widgets in other videos. There's actually a knowledge base article if you're interested in it on our support site here. You can come to knowledge base. And UX designer, and I think it's called modifying links maximum attack widgets. So there's a PDF that describes how to modify those. I'll actually make a video about it as well, but just note that if you try to do a style sheet on these widgets, it won't work like you expect. Okay, the last thing I want to point out, when you add something, a widget, for instance, into this, you'll notice it's going to match the sort of this look and feel of what we have currently set up. So a lot of we have set up, and one of the nice things about style sheets is you can define for your application what every widget should look like. And we've actually done that. So if you come to this main application window in your object window over here, so this is your main application object for this, and you right click and you say change style sheet on this object. So we can take a look here. So we've defined the background for this specific object, which is this color. The color you see back here. So you can use that background. But everything under that is, for instance, these Q push buttons, Q group box. We've predefined what these look like. So a Q group box, we've said, okay, make it, when a Q group box is added, make it this color. So let me kind of show this in a easier to understand way. If I come down, let's add a push button. So we just saw a push button be added, and it looks like this. Now let's come in here and remove the style sheet for a push button. Okay, I may have missed it at the top. I'm just going to highlight this and cut it out. That way I can just paste it back in a second. So I'm gonna hit OK or apply. So without our pre-styling of that, this is what the push buttons look like. So we've gone ahead and said whenever you add a push button to the project, make it look like our CrossControl sort of color pattern. This is good in a lot of circumstances, as it is a good place to start. But for instance, in certain things like the progress bar, which I seem to be very bad at finding these things. Here we go. So the progress bar looks like this. If we were to, for instance, you can change certain details about it, and if I change something in this style sheet instead of in the application style sheet, this style sheet will generally overwrite anything in the application style sheet. So I can change the background color and it turns blue. It overwrites, what was defined in the parent style sheet. So by default, every child widget is going to inherit properties of the style sheet from its parent, if it's predefined or not. So I mean, it'll inherit other properties even if it's not predefined. It'll still inherit like a background property, a background color property. Now if you change the style sheet directly, it will overwrite the inherited properties from its parent. But there are certain things like the progress bar, if I were to try to make this come down here and make it vertical. So I can see here orientation horizontal. If I were to try to make this vertical, you'll notice there's no progress bar here. And this is actually a problem in the style sheet, because if we come to the progress bar, we find the Q progress bar here. What it is this width is you're defining the chunk, so like the inside part, you're saying give it a width, which is inherently for horizontal progress bars. So if you change this to height, now you get something. So keep in mind, I guess, that you can also overwrite the settings by keeping this, but just taking this piece of code, or like for instance grabbing all of the style sheet that's predefined for the template, coming into this one, pasting it, and changing this to height here. So now it will overwrite the parent and you get it correctly viewed. But if not, you can kind of sometimes be a bit confused as to what's going on. So just keep in mind that in the template, we've actually predefined a lot of the look and feel of the widgets. If you don't like them, you can just come and completely remove all of this if you want, and then you just get the look of a default widget. You can also just come and look up if something's not looking right to you. You can come up and find it in our predefined list, copy it all, and paste it into that specific widget, and make your changes there. So you can define pretty minute things here. Okay, so I think that does it for this video. Style sheets can get pretty, I wouldn't say complex, but there's a lot of things you can do with them, and I can't cover everything in the video, so I would just say the resources and documentation for Qt Online is your best resource for figuring out, if you want to do something specific. There is not only a lot of information from Qt, their website, but obviously there's a lot of people that are doing things here, so using Qt for their own development in the mobile phones or Windows tools, etc. So if you have a question about style sheets, chances are someone else has also tried to do the same thing. So Google is a good friend. All right, thanks for watching, and tune into the other videos. Thanks.